Call the meeting of May 20th, 2024.
Mayor, your microphone, please.
To order at 6 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and tonight we have Pastor David Barnes from Icon Church.
Okay. Dear Father, we praise you. We are thankful for your grace, your mercy in our lives. We're thankful for your grace and mercy on this city, this community. God, we just lift this entire community up for blessing, for protection. God, in this meeting, thank you for all of these servants that faithfully serve you and faithfully serve the people of this community. I pray for discernment and wisdom as they process through decisions. Pray for open hearts. I pray for calm words and just a peaceful meeting in here tonight. And God, thank you for this Sumner community. Thank you for all those throughout the history who have built it and those today that continue to try to see it through and do the best thing for it in all situations. So God, we praise you because you are a good God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Potato,
Absent.
Bowman. Here. Brown. Clarigat,
Here.
Cole,
Absent.
Alfers,
Here.
Ranky.
Here.
All right. Councilmember Botetto and Deputy Mayor Cole are both absent. Do I have a motion to excuse them from tonight's meeting?
I will make a motion to excuse Councilmember Cole and Councilmember Potato.
Thank you. That was from Councilmember Elfers,
I'll second the motion.
seconded by Councilmember Ranky. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Okay. Before we begin, I want to remind everybody attending that this evening's meeting in person, that it's being recorded and that this room is equipped with microphones throughout that will pick up any talking. So please refrain from sidebar discussions that you do not wish for everybody to hear. One other item, there's been an amendment made to the agenda. An executive session has been added. All right, first up, we have a presentation by Communications Director Carmen Palmer on our legislative recap for 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. And we are also joined by Bill Clark, our lobbyist, and he is joining us virtually. So you see his face up there on the screen.
There he is.
Everybody's my audio sound okay?
Sounds good, Bill.
Perfect.
Good. Thanks for letting me join virtually at a college student to get set up for the summer. So we're in the midst of that. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to dive in, and Bill, we usually tag team this. So as usual, I'm going to kind of give the overview and then give you some opportunities to jump in. Just a little more different because you're not right next to me. So I can't sense when you've got something to say. So if I talk right over you, just jump in. Otherwise, I'll give you plenty of opportunities.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. You had three main items on your legislative agenda this year. Again, this was the short session, the second session of the biennial budget for the state. So I will just jump right in. Support local decision-making authority. There were a lot of bills that were proposed in the 23 session that were still live. So these were the ones that we were keeping our eye on. Red means I guess for lack of a better term, we didn't get our way. Green means we got the way we wanted. Sometimes that meant passage, sometimes that meant not in passing. So nothing was taken up to reduce the frivolous Public Records Act lawsuits. Again, that was to make sure people who want records had access to them in a timely manner, while we're getting inundated with ones that want broad ones on purpose or want to misuse the public records system. Nothing happened on that in this session. Nothing happened on the property tax cap, except it was discussed and we heard a lot of confusion on this one. So we'll be keeping our eye out. A lot of people are thinking their taxes are capped at 1%. They're not realizing the city's revenue is capped at 1%. Big difference, especially when you're going to go into your biennial budget. There was also a related bill that would have increased the city's authority to use public safety's sales tax funding. So, allowing for public safety, which is normally in our general fund, to be funded a little bit through sales tax to alleviate this property tax cap and the pressure it puts on funding, but that didn't pass either. Foster legislation, there was a small portion passed, and this is one where Bill probably knows way more than I do. So Bill, can you maybe jump in on this one?
Yeah, sure. And I'll also touch on the property tax issue. I think coming out of this budget cycle, really the last 4 years where you had both state and some assistance to local governments, propped up to some extent by COVID-related relief and revenue, that's kind of done. And so now there's I think more realization of the property tax problems with the limit of 1%, especially driven by counties, right? Counties are especially dependent on property tax because they don't have much sales tax revenue. So I think this issue is going to continue to get more attention in the next 2-year cycle. The Foster legislation deals with the water rights issue and the types of mitigation that cities can provide to get additional water rights. The bill itself didn't pass. There was additional funding provided to look at this issue on how you model groundwater impacts. I think Sumner is one of the 6 so-called Foster pilot projects that can proceed under a kind of preferential status, in part because the White River Restoration project is such a comprehensive, it's not just getting water rights, it's a floodplain restoration, habitat restoration, in-stream flows, et cetera. So I think the Sumner project remains very well supported. It's really a lot of other parts of the state that need this Foster legislation to pass ultimately. And it sounds like there's going to be another interim process with a bunch of legislators on that water committee looking at it over the rest of the year.
Thanks, Bill. A couple other ones where we had suggested improvements. A big one is the efforts to increase affordable housing around transit. We're very much interested in this. We are for affordable housing. We have our housing action plan, a lot of steps taken to increase affordable housing in Sumner. However, most of the efforts being done at the state level are to do a very top-down approach, especially with zoning. A lot of bills that Ryan Windish went and spoke to, either against or trying to get them to make them better, because what would happen in Sumner is a lot of these bills are just looking at straight out across the state, half-mile radius from a transit station, or a quarter-mile radius, which for Sumner is most of downtown Sumner, and changing, really taking to the state level most of some significant zoning requirements, requiring 6-story height for buildings, requiring that there has to be multifamily allowed, no single family. Some even talking about that we can't require parking, because the thought at the state level is, well, they'll just always ride transit, missing the distinction that Sumner has a commuter rail station, not the type of transit station like you would see in Columbia City, where you can jump on a train or a light rail all the time to run to the store or school or whatever. So trying to give that differentiation, this is a major one. I mentioned it actually 2 weeks ago, that sense of feeling like you're losing Sumner. This is a major issue. And it's one of those that it seems like everyone's kind of flying under everyone's radar until its impacts are felt. And the impacts are going to be big for Sumner. So we keep working on that one. Ryan keeps testifying, but we expect to see more of that back. Bill, that was such a big one. Do you have anything on that before I move on?
Yeah, and I think the shift on this issue that I anticipate for 2025 is because the central Puget Sound counties and the cities within those counties, so King County, Pierce County, Snohomish, and Kitsap, are doing their growth management comp plan updates. A number of the cities that have not done zoning near their transit areas will do that in this cycle, right? So there will be upzoning in other parts of central Puget Sound. I think there's more interest in looking at incentives for cities to help development occur consistent with the zoning they've already adopted, because you'll have a lot of zoning changes and development regulation changes through the GMA process. In some areas, you've seen a lot of zoning action, but not a lot of development occurring because of interest rates and other factors within the housing market. So I predict kind of a shift on this issue where the legislature will not necessarily try to mandate the zoning, but try to incentivize and provide tax incentives and things like that to help development occur within transit areas.
That would be nice. Sumner, just a reminder, does use things like the multifamily tax exemption to help with the incentives. It's the mandatory thing that we have an issue with. So we believe we can have our housing, our upzoning, and our charming downtown as well. The next one was just a reminder. We didn't anticipate anything specifically in the legislature, but PFAS, and I can't even try to pronounce what PFAS stands for, but that's the forever chemicals they're finding are in a lot of substances, especially like things like fire retardants, pans. No legislative action on that, but as we anticipated, a lot of regulatory activity coming down by the federal government on water levels and testing that will affect the city.
Yeah, and that's the other one about PFAS, and you've probably seen it. There've been, considerable coverage in the Seattle Times and in Tacoma News Tribune and other papers about it because it's been detected in a number of water systems, more around like Joint Base in Lakewood Water District, City of DuPont, those areas. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the state's capital budget, especially, which is where things like the Public Works Assistance Account get funded. And there are going to be additional new testing requirements for all public water systems. So that's going to be a cost impact for cities going forward because of what the EPA has done at the federal level.
A lot of these things, you'll sense a theme through this whole presentation of unfunded mandates. So a lot of the things we're not arguing with the effort or the intent behind it, but the fact that the state and federal level like to do a lot of unfunded mandates where they tell the city and put a lot more work on the cities without any funding source. That's where the pressure often comes in. And you'll see that in a number of things. There were a number of bills that were passed in 23 that were still alive in 24 that had us concerned. Most of those did not pass for various reasons. You can see the list there. I won't read all of it. I know we have a busy agenda, but lots of things that also crossed over into law enforcement. The one I want to highlight that I actually did put in red is one thing that wasn't a specific bill, but just a reminder that since 2020, the city's insurance has increased 199%. And we know we're not alone in that. So nothing specific passed to that item, but in conversations about law enforcement and crime, we were still hearing a lot of the phrase, it's just a property crime. So while that's not as affecting as a personal crime against someone else, trying to get the legislature to understand what property crimes are doing to our insurance, to everyone else's insurance. Seems like they haven't quite made that correlation yet. So we'll keep trying. Bill, anything on any of these?
No, not really. They all kind of fit a kind of micromanagey kind of pattern, right? Where I think legislators can tend to think like if they're not introducing bills, they're not doing their job. And so these are bills that are kind of micromanaging bills. There's a lot of opposition from a number of these from both cities and also county law enforcement.
Thank you. All right, the second major topic was continue police reforms that improve public safety. We had a lot on this one too, as did most cities. This one was a mixed bag. A few did not pass. You'll see those in red. The big one that probably everybody heard about on radio, TV, social media with the pursuit policy did pass. So that was a great one. One that did not pass that, we've been bringing up a little bit lately in conversations is a law that actually requires currently that a parent or guardian provide consent for a juvenile simply to be interviewed by police. That is a hindrance to police trying to respond in a timely manner, understand what's going on, especially in busy areas around schools. So we would like to see a little bit more amendment work done on that one to make it a little more realistic. And nothing happened on that in this session. However, they did eliminate the 25% local government cost share for the academy. And so that was a nice one to have pass. Anything on this one?
I would just add that on the police pursuit authority, that was one of 6 different initiatives to the legislature that was filed last year. And so it gives the legislature the choice either to pass the initiative as it's sent to them, to do nothing, in which case it then would go on the ballot this November, or to pass an alternative. And so the legislature passed 3 of them. One was the police pursuit authority bill. One was a bill dealing with school curriculum and transparency at the local level. And then a bill kind of restating the prohibition against local income taxes. So the legislature passed those 3. The 3 the legislature didn't pass, which will be on the ballot, one would be a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act, which is the state's carbon cap and trade law, that if that is passed and it is repealed, would be about a $3 billion hole in the state budget. Local governments don't take positions on ballot measures like initiatives, but AWC did a pretty interesting kind of fact sheet that just explains on a factual basis, if the Climate Commitment Act is repealed, here's what the impacts would be on different programs. I'll send that to you, Carmen. It's worth taking a look at, just so people understand what the Climate Commitment Act funds currently. And then there's a repeal of the capital gains tax that's on the ballot, which would be about $1 billion hole in the state budget if that passes. And then another initiative that would allow people to opt out of the state's long-term care insurance, which I think is the analysis on that is if more people opt out, it no longer becomes an actuarially sound insurance program. So the 3 that are on the ballot are the kind of 3 big ticket items. The 3 that they passed, including the police pursuit bill, were ones where the legislature thought that the initiatives were a fair enough improvement in public policy just to get them passed, so they did not go to the voters.
Okay. Just the one big one I kind of kept on its own slide is both Sumner and AWC priority to help cities recruit and retain police officers. One big one on that was responding the first responder wellness. As you probably already know, Sumner has been a leader for that in Pierce County, particularly with Deputy Chief McCurdy. So seeing this being brought up to the importance of the state level in a bill was really nice to see. In that picture, if you look really close, hiding in the back is Deputy Chief McCurdy at the bill signing. Anything on this one, Bill, before I?
No.
A couple of other things too was behavioral health resources. And we did put this under public safety because we do believe there's a direct correlation with that sense of safety in your community. So a number of bills actually were passed on this one. So nice to see some movement on that. There's probably still room for some more. Bill, anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, the behavioral health area is one where the legislature, I think, really focused on this year. So there weren't, sweeping bills, a number of smaller kind of targeted bills. These were 4 of them.
And fund key infrastructure projects. This is one we didn't spend a lot of time on when we passed the legislative agenda. And actually, I think we got more out of it than I was actually anticipating with the short session. So that was a nice change of pace. The gateway funding increased from, these numbers are crazy, but 875 million to 1 billion. The Gateway project is the one that finishes 167, the freeway to nowhere. So even while that happens outside of Sumner, it definitely affects us since it's right next to us. We did help out. The second one where we were helping out our friends at WashDOT by mentioning it was the implementation plan for 167, speaking of that freeway. Nothing happened with us with that. And you will see that come back when we set your 25 legislative agenda. It's a little interesting nuance where WashDOT kept pressuring us to spend a lot of time lobbying on that instead of them. So we do have to make some choices about our political capital, our time. Is that worth it? They kept saying they couldn't lobby. They could, they didn't want to. So yet another, it seemed kind of odd, almost in process, even the state was trying to push some of its responsibilities onto the city to fund and complete. So that was an interesting nuance. The big win was that the River Grove pedestrian bridge had been our capital request in 23. We didn't think it had made it anywhere, but Representative Robertson and Senator Fortunato kept it from just simply dying and actually got that funded. And that is not tied to the CCA. So that is not one of those items that would go away if the initiative passed in November. Bill.
Yeah, just the one comment on that is, keep in mind that the legislature has 3 budgets, right? They have the operating budget, the capital budget, and the transportation budget. The River Grove pedestrian bridge, initially we started that effort in 2023 as a capital budget, which called a local community project request. In the end, it got funded more in through the transportation budget. And I think the lesson there is, you're not going to get what you don't ask for. And so one of the things between now and the end of this year is figure out for the next 2-year budget cycle, what are the local community projects of priority, which could be trails, transportation, community centers, things like that we can make the ask for in 2025. And maybe it gets funded then, maybe it carries over to the next year. But it just shows you, it's important to have your oar in the water, so to speak. And Rep. Robertson kind of saw the opportunity where in the transportation budget, they were funding a number of these kind of local trails projects. And that's what wasn't able to get the funding for River Grove. So that was a very good outcome.
Thank you. I would just add to that, this was an interesting one. I mentioned it in the extensive May 6th presentation I gave you. The weird quirk in these types of asks is it seems like when you come with a historic building, they send you right to Heritage Capital. So they don't let you do that where you're trying to get it from the different sources like we were able to do for River Grove pedestrian bridge or for a trail. I don't know why the state has that kind of mindset, but we did experience that when we brought them a number of different projects for that local capital ask. And Ryan House got kicked back to us. The updates were we were thanking them for funding. We don't always want to be asking. So we were reminding them that their investments have helped with the White River Restoration Project, Stewart Road Bridge, 166, Valley Avenue and 410 interchange. That's a WashDOT project, but still in our city. And the Rainier View covered court that's going up right now. All right, just a couple other items. And looking to the future, just in general, I talked about this last year. Both Bill and I talked about this last year, and it's continuing, just the avalanche of bills. So many bills, so many of them seem intent on micromanaging cities and providing unfunded mandates. So these are just things to keep in mind as you're heading into the biennial budget. You'll see there just some examples from the pretreatment program to redefining and adding facilities that are considered essential public facilities. The state just seems to keep growing their decisions that used to be at a city level. What that does to a city is puts us in an awkward position. And you'll see the quote from a resident that we received back in April that said, I won't accept that you couldn't have done more. This was in regard to an essential public facility. And that's really this where we're stuck. You'll see from AWC are those that graphic about how much more likely voters are to go speak to their city about something than the state. So we're caught because we have the state wanting to make these decisions, saying cities will make that decision for you. And then you have the public coming and saying, why did you do that? And I think understandably, they think we're kind of kicking the can or trying to brush them off when we say, well, the state is requiring us to do it that way. That is actually the truth. It's not the answer people want to hear, but that's the position we are in right now. Bill, how about weighing on that part?
Yeah, the only I'd say that, is a challenge is, and I'm dealing with this right now for a public utility district, is local governments, whether they're cities or water or sewer districts or counties, cannot do what's called grassroots lobby, right? If there is a bill proposed in the legislature that would have an adverse impact on your city, you, the city, can lobby against it. As council members, you can contact legislators. You can have me on your behalf do that. Jason can do it. The mayor can do it, et cetera. Carmen can do it. What you can't do is activate your citizens against a legislative proposal, right? You can't do grassroots lobbying, meaning there's a proposal that would take some authority away from the city or adversely affect, the city of Sumner. You can't send something out to your residents saying, call the legislature and tell them to oppose this bill. And so you get this type of comment where the city can, on its own, work for or against something. You can inform the public, here is a bill and here is what it would do, but you can't assist them in lobbying against it, right? And so you're in this kind of tough middle ground where the city can analyze what the impacts are, but it cannot activate its citizens to go lobby against something. And that's the challenge you see where there are issues that the state takes on that impose requirements on local governments, but you can't activate your citizens to work against it during the legislative session.
A couple of thank yous to all of our representatives and senators. I don't know if everyone knew, Representative Eric Robertson is not running again, so we thank him for his service. We also thank, Sumner is in the 31st district, but the 25th district has always been a good neighbor, a good partner, very open to listening to our challenges and needs as well, even though we're not directly. So we did want to thank them. All of our representatives, they put in a lot of hard work. And we're almost there. Well, this just goes to the point that Bill was making, just a reminder to everyone, the legislative agenda is a very important tool, not only to know for us what your direction is to go and to give Bill direction on how to speak on behalf of the city, but also I think to the point that Bill just made, this is our tool to educate the public, not activate, but educate the public on how different things being discussed at the state level we anticipate affecting us and impacting us. And so, he talked about that. Hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble. I'm not activating anybody, but giving that bit of education so that people do have maybe the information to go on their own and speak their minds. So far, at least the state is still allowing virtual testimony. So that is a nice tool because it is difficult to get down to Olympia and talk about the zoning in your neighborhood. So Bill, I know you just kind of touched on this, but anything more?
Yeah, no, the other thing just on that last bullet for 2025, I think there will be something like 30 new legislators. There's more open seats than I think there's ever been. The Senate especially is losing a number of kind of moderating voices. So that'll be, I think, a change next year. So yeah, I mean, I think, obviously November is a big year it will be a big month for a number of reasons, but I think it'll really make a change in what the legislature looks like next year.
That is the end of our presentation. Any questions?
Any questions for Carmen? None. Thank you, Carmen.
All right.
Thank you, Bill, for all you do out there.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everybody.
All right, now we have Public Works Director Michael Kosa with a National Public Works Week proclamation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm here to read the proclamation prepared for National Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Sumner. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our cities and nation's transportation, water supply, wastewater treatment, stormwater conveyances, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And Whereas it is in the public interest for community members and civic leaders in the city of Sumner to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of Sumner proclaims the week May 19th through the 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week and urges all community members to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contribution they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Beyond that, in the Public Works Department, we have 49 permanent staff members and 6 seasonals and interns, as well as a number of other departments in the city that do the great work of public works. So as you see folks around this week or any week, please, I invite you to thank them for the important work they do for our community.
Thank you, Mr. Kosa. Okay, consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item number 1, resolution number 1683, rejecting all bids for W2404 wind drinking signage. Item number 2, resolution number 1684, local and community project program, LCP, grant acceptance. Item number 3, 166, widening and improvements consultant agreement supplement. Item 4, Public Works Trust Fund loan application certification. Item 5, approval of the checks and electronic payments in the amount of $2,468. $2,468,783.68. Item 6, approval of the meeting minutes from the May 6, 2024 council meeting, the May 6 special study session, and the May 13th, 2024 study session.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowman would you like to please make a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Elfers. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Would any council member wish to remove an item? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. All right. Now we move down to public hearings. We have no public hearing tonight. And regular business on unfinished business resolution number 1686, 2024, 2030 Parks and Trails Plan adoption. Councilmember Elfers, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 1686, 2024, 2030 Parks and Trails Plan adoption.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Ranky. I will call on Community Services Manager Derek Berry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Speakers on, right? We're good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me here tonight to consider the adoption of the Parks and Trails Plan. So first question, when people hear Parks and Trails Plan, if I can get this to work. Can you advance it, Jeff? There's only 5 slides, everyone, so. So the first slide, what is a Parks and Trail Plan and why should we have one? It's the community's long-range vision for our Parks and Trail system. It guides our development management of our system, and it is updated every 6 years. One big part of it is that it helps with maintaining eligibility for grants. The plan contents include summary introduction, the existing conditions where they can do an inventory of what we have in our system, public input, which started over a year ago. Goals and objectives, demand and needs analysis, where we kind of look at what we have and things we can improve on. Capital improvement program is where we identify a lot of the projects that came through the public input. Helps us keep those eligible for funding as well. And then plan implementation and the appendices. Next slide, process. So once again, a lot of public input. We had 3 surveys online at least. We also had 2 mapping surveys. We had pop-ups in the park. We went and met with elementary students. It's a fun process and you learn a lot about the community. A big part of it was the draft plan being recommended from Forestry and Parks Commission, and then going to the Planning Commission with public hearing recommendation from them as well. And then our public hearing and study sessions here with council. So that's the process we've gone through. Open up to any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Barry? Seeing none, and this already had a public hearing, so there'll be no comments from the public. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Elfers,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Farragut,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Thank you, passes unanimous. Okay. Moving on, public comment. Michelle, will you please read the rules for public comment?
Public comment. This is the time for you to address the mayor and the council as a whole regarding items that are not on the agenda. When the mayor calls your name, please approach the podium. And if you're participating via Zoom, use the raise your hand or telephonically press *9. Before you begin your remarks, please state your name and address or city in which you reside for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. As a reminder, public comment is a time for the council to hear from you and not a time to engage in back and forth debate. If you have a specific questions, the mayor may direct you to the appropriate staff person for further discussion.
Thank you. So does anyone either in the audience or participating on Zoom have any comments they would like to make regarding items which are not on the agenda? Anybody out there? We have one online. And I can't read it from here.
It's Albert Jr.
Albert Jr., go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I have 3 minutes, correct?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I have a little speech here I wanted to read. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm calling for the city to pass a resolution supporting free speech. Having the city openly defend the Constitution is not only something that can be done, but it must be done. I'd like to address the attacks on free speech that are taking place across the country, state, and local governments. States like Michigan, South Carolina, Florida, New Jersey, and others have passed or are trying to pass bills that criminalize wrongthink. Not only does hate speech laws violate the First Amendment, they are discriminately used against certain groups. There is no hate speech exemptions to the First Amendment. Just because you may feel uncomfortable from certain types of speech, it doesn't make it illegal. These hate speech laws don't criminalize hate, they criminalize white people speaking facts. The ADL is a leading force behind these laws to outlaw speech. But who is the ADL? They're an organization of supremacist, anti-white lobbyists. They push divisive laws and hold politicians in their pockets. The founding of the ADL was inspired after a Jewish man named Leo Frank raped and murdered a child that worked for him. While being questioned, Mr. Frank blamed a black man named Jim Conley, but that didn't work. He was found guilty by his peers, consisting of white and black jurors, and ultimately faced justice at the end of the rope. The organization was founded to protect and defend the legacy of a child rapist murderer. I'll make it clear that I don't support speech that calls for violence or is legally criminal, but we already have laws that prevent that type of language. These speech laws go further than just punishing speech that is unpopular to some. It includes Islamic and Christian scripture. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act recently passed Congress. This bill includes scripture as hate speech. Here's some examples of what may soon be outlawed speech. Saying the factual statement that only 2 genders exist, that only women can have babies, and that transgenderism is a mental illness are all at risk of being outlawed. The New Testament said in John 8:4 says, "You belong to your father the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Talking about the Red Cross documents that estimate that the real figures of Jewish deaths during the Holocaust were really in the 250,000 range, not the 6 million narrative that the communists have pushed. Asking the question, why did gas chambers have wooden doors? Or why did the doors swing in open instead of swinging out? I mean, if gas chambers were really packed full of people, how would the doors open afterwards? Or how Zyklon B was a common pesticide used for delousing of fleas, which spread typhoid. Admitting that typhoid and starvation caused by the Axis, by the Allies' disruption of supply lines, was the real killer of those in the work camps, would be considered hate speech under these asinine laws. If the facts are so concrete, they don't need to fear questions, but if the facts can't stand questioning, are they as really facts then? Outlawing speech that questions the state's narrative is a clear red flag that maybe we've been lied to. Why is it that the police were given orders to stand down while protesters burned, looted, and murdered during the 2020 riots? But now college students are peacefully protesting at universities, they're being met with violence. To learn who rules over you, simply find out.
Your
Go to
time is up, Albert.
gtwires.com.
Excuse me, Mr. Albert, your time is up.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Mayor, we do have 2 more online comments.
Oh, we have 2 more online. We have. Thank you. Joe Kunzler.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Joe Kunzler, and I too have a prepared statement that I would like to read. It is against hatred. The struggle between the people and the hatred amongst them is being nurtured by a very specific interested party. It is a small, rootless international clique that is turning people against each other and that does not want them to have peace. It is a people who are at home, both nowhere and everywhere, who do not have anywhere a soil on which they have grown up, but who live today in New York, Los Angeles tomorrow, Paris the day after that, and then Brussels, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, or London, and who feel at home everywhere. They are the only ones who can really be regarded as international elements because they conduct their business everywhere. We see international Jewry as a direct threat to every nation, and we do not care what other peoples do about the danger. However, we do care about what we do to defend our own business and our own people. Our people know this. It is our healthy instincts that have led us through the daily confusion of intellectual and spiritual difficulties. We know today that the war in Ukraine and the campaigns in the Middle East of the last few decades have only limited significance in this issue. The European people are fighting for everything that they have. We know that the European people are defending their holiest possessions, their families, their women, their children, the beautiful and untouched countryside of Europe and the European diaspora countries such as Canada, Australia, and the United States, our cities, our villages, our 2,000 plus year old culture, and everything indeed that makes life worth living. And it is my firm conviction that we cannot overcome the Jewish danger unless we use equivalent, though not identical, methods. The European people face the gravest demand in recognizing this danger, namely of finding the determination and will to use all of our resources to protect everything that we have, everything that we will need in the future, and everything we love. Down with terroristic Jewry, down with communism. Long live the USA. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next one. Charla Nash. Go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. My name's Charlotte Nash. My goodness. I've noticed that there is a trend in anti-Semitism. You see it all over social media, so much so that they are attempting to ban TikTok, but also now we're seeing it in our colleges, in our workplaces, and right here. I grew up being told that we should respect people's religions because most religions they're really just based on being the best person you can be, whether you're Buddhist or Christian or Mormon. It all kind of revolves around just being a good person. I also was told growing up that most hatred stems from not understanding fully. So I took it upon myself to read about the Jewish people and I learned a lot of things. I learned that they were kicked out of 109 nations. That's crazy to me. That this has been going on since the beginning of time, since we were able to keep records. Those records show that people don't like these people, right? So I decided to do more research and I found out that, the religious text we all know, the Torah, is one text they have, but another one they have is called the Talmud. And I'd like to read some things from it. Gittin 57a, Jesus is in hell being boiled in hot excrement. Sanhedrin 57a, what a Jew steals from a non-Jew, he may keep. Sanhedrin 58b, if a non-Jew hits a Jew, he must be killed. Worse even, Yebamuth 98a, all non-Jew children are animals. Probably the worst part though, Kebamuth 11b, a man who engaged in intercourse with a girl less than 3 years of age has done nothing wrong. Now, this isn't a text that was written forever ago and they no longer follow. This is found in every single synagogue. I started reading and looking into this, hoping that I would find a reason to appreciate these people and denounce the anti-Semitism that is spreading like wildfire. But I find myself standing against them because the more I read about the Jewish people, the more hatred I have in my own heart. Because I love my people enough to not want them to be called beasts, goyim. I love my children enough to know that I don't think that they should, from the Jewish Talmud's book, be allowed to be molested. I mean, that's literally what it says. And as they are not Jews, they should also be.
Your time is up.
Your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And Mr. Behrman? Not on the agenda. It's something not on the agenda.
Great. It's on, okay. I just want to say that after seeing the presentation with the legislative agenda, that I would like to see if there is a way that community members can engage with city staff and work toward coming up with ideas and policies that we want the city to advocate for on our behalf. So it was very nice to see that Carmen was doing a lot of work at the state level to advocate for the city. But can the residents also be involved in the process? Is there like a committee? Is there meetings, or is there a process that the citizens can also be involved in that legislative agenda? I do know that we can contact our legislators by ourselves, but if the city is speaking on our behalf, can we have a say in that as well? It's more of a question, but also a statement.
Thank you. Okay.
Mayor, if that wraps up public comment, I'd like a moment to address council and also the public,
That,
unless there's more public.
did we have anybody else that wanted to get up and speak for 3 minutes about something not on the agenda?
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
Melody Adams Foster. It's just really quick. I just wanted to say I was a little bit surprised by the comments tonight. And I just want to say I am anti-Semitic. I'm also for the rights of Islam and whatever religion you happen to be, and respect that. I think the quotes from the Torah and the other books that were read were probably out of context and without understanding of it. And to just say that, hey, as a community, I would like to say we support the differences of other religions. That's all.
Anybody else? Mr. Yoder.
Called worse, but I like Yoder.
Said Mr.
This is kind of different than what everything else I've heard tonight, but I had a couple of customers approach me. And when I retired, I said, you know, all I give now is free advice. I don't sell cars anymore. So they approached me and said, well, where do I get my electric car charged in Sumner? I said, I don't know. I said, I don't have one, but I'll find out. So I went out last week driving around and I knew there was some over behind Heritage Bank. So I drove over there. There's no cords to plug into cars. So I knew there was a couple out at Winco. What do they say? Out of service. So just by accident, I saw some over at the cannery, same thing. So do you not want people to buy, you know, electric cars in Sumner? Or what are we doing about the problem? Because that's a serious problem. Biden's trying to convince everybody you have to have an electric car. Well, if you live in Sumner, you better not. So is there more chargers out there that I don't know about?
I think that's the three that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. So you spend big money to put a charger at home when it would be handier just to grab that, but just something to think about that. If you get excited about buying an electric car, I'm sure there's 3 or 4 of you up there have electric cars, but I don't know where you get them charged.
So those were put in by Puget Sound Energy, so you might want to call.
Well, I know that they're not our problem, but whoever's cutting the cords.
Right.
Okay, give you something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, we are moving on to,
Mayor,
yes.
can I have a moment to address the council and?
Oh, I'm sorry. Of
Yeah,
course
no
you
problem.
can.
Tonight, I want to address the public comments that we received. Upholding the laws and Constitution of the United States are very important to the city, and the Constitution gives people the right to freedom of speech in a forum such as this. That has been determined to mean that we cannot regulate the content of a person's comments, no matter how much hate they spread or how abhorrent we find the comments to be. We can, however, enforce time limitations and will not tolerate behavior that is disruptive to the city council's important business. This evening, we upheld our duty to the Constitution, even though we found the comments disgustingly offensive and completely irrelevant to city business. It should be noted that the same freedom of speech allows me to say, and I'm positive that the council agrees, that we as the city of Sumner find the sentiment shared tonight to be hateful and bigoted. We will do everything we can to make sure such sentiment is not welcomed in our community. Please do not confuse our respect for free speech with any kind of acceptance for what the commenters said. We know callers have been blasting cities across our region looking for some kind of home for their hate speech. And we can assure everyone that they will not find it here in Sumner. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, we are going to ordinance number 2882, authorizing a public works trust fund loan. Councilmember Clerget, would you mind making a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2882, authorizing Public Works Trust Fund loan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Alford, seconded by Mr. Alford. I call on Chief Financial Officer Cassandra Raymond.
Good evening. All right. You've actually seen this ordinance before. Ordinance 2882 came before you on February 20th of 2024. This was authorizing the acceptance of a Public Works Trust Fund loan for the construction of a decamp facility. The original authorization was for $2,804,414 at an interest rate of 1.72% and a term of 20 years. When we opened the bids in March, the bids actually came in higher than the engineer's estimate. The Public Works Board has a mechanism in place where in that eventuality, municipalities can request an increase to their trust fund award. And we reached out to them requesting an increase of $330,000 to that trust fund. The Public Works Board met and reviewed our request at their meeting in May. We discussed this with our Finance Committee on April the 18th. So before you is a revised ordinance 2882. This changes the award amount, or the loan amount, I should say, to $3,134,414 with the same interest and term as the original. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions on this end? All right. Any comments from the public? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bowman,
Yes.
Cole,
Absent.
excuse me, I'm sorry. Clarigat,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Alfers.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right, passes unanimous. Ordinance number 2887, establishing Fund 004 Capital Reserve Fund. Councilmember Ranky, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 2887, establishing Fund 400 for Capital Reserve Fund.
And do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember. I call on Cassandra again.
Good evening again. So before you is ordinance 2887. This is establishing Fund 004. This is a capital reserve fund in our general fund series. We have been under a purchase and sale agreement for the Sumner Meadows Golf Course for over 10 years now. As we approach the closing of that sale, the city would like to establish a new fund for the proceeds of that sale in order to provide transparent and accountable transaction data. So happy to answer any questions. This really is a housekeeping function of establishing that new fund. The proceeds will be deposited into it, and then any appropriations from that will be made through the general process through a budget appropriation with city council approval.
Thank you. Any comments from the public first? Seeing none, any comments from the council? All right, seeing none. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Clarigat,
Yes.
Alfers,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
passes. All right. Ordinance number 2888, establishing Sumner Municipal Code 1.22, government speech. Councilmember Bowman, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I ask that we adopt ordinance number 2888, establishing Sumner Municipal Code 1.22 government speech.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Rankin. I call on City Attorney Andrea Marquez.
Thank you. Good evening. Before you tonight is ordinance number 2888, codifying a new section of municipal code related to government speech. The government speech doctrine, excuse me, stands for the idea that the government, in this case, the city, has many necessary reasons for advancing its speech without opening up a forum for viewpoint neutrality or First Amendment free speech protections. Thus, when the city itself is the speaker, this doctrine does not require the city to also offer an opportunity for the public to speak. There are a variety of examples about when the city may be the sole speaker. First is the use of city-owned flagpoles, where the city complies with state and federal mandates about which flags will be flown. We do not allow the private rental of our flagpoles. Another example is city-owned signage, where the city controls the dissemination of generally applicable public information, and we do not invite the public to advertise or otherwise post messages on city-owned signage. Having a clear policy on this point is extremely important. There have been a variety of United States Supreme Court cases recently that prompted this ordinance that's before you this evening. The public needs to know, for example, if they're able to rent a city-owned flagpole to fly their flag of their choosing, or if they can request that the lights on the Cannery Way Bridge can be changed to a color that might support their priorities or position on a social or political issue. This policy makes it clear that that is not an option available to the public. The policy being proposed makes it clear that the city exclusively controls the speech on city-owned infrastructure, such as flagpoles, bridge lights, the downtown sound system, city-owned signage, the website, etc., and makes it clear that they are not forums for the expression of free speech by members of the general public. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions from the public? Mr. Bierman?
Can I go up? Yes. Oh yeah, Nick Bierman, Parker Road East here in Sumner. So my question on the free speech, it's an ordinance before you, is can the city, if the ordinance is saying that the city is not renting out, correct? That's my understanding. The city is not renting out the use of something like a flagpole for or an organization's agenda or purpose, right? But can the city still fly a flag or put up banners in support of a social issue? For example, like during Pride Month, could the city fly a pride flag on the flagpole at its own choosing, or does this ordinance eliminate that as a possibility? That's my question.
It's a great question. I have an answer for you. The ordinance is drafted to specifically allow via mayor proclamation or city administrator mandate the temporary flying of another flag. It would be for no more than 30 days. For the purpose that you just stated.
Thank you. Anybody else out there? All right, seeing none. Anybody up here? Any questions?
Yeah.
You have one? Okay.
Can you, I'm sorry, Ms. Marquez, I was just curious, what, can you give us an example of some litigation or something that happened and specifically that caused this?
Yeah, well, it was a flagpole case out of the city of Boston that prompted the most recent legislation out of the United States Supreme Court, where the city of Boston had an event space that included the area where their flagpoles are located out front of their city hall. And private parties could rent that space, and they were also able to fly whatever flag they chose. A Christian organization asked to fly their flag. The city of Boston said that violates the expression clause because we're a government, we can't support one religion over another, and said no. That made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you don't have a policy that makes it clear to the public that they can't rent those poles for the flying of their flag and the expression of their speech. So it violated the Constitution. On the flip side of that, there's another United States Supreme Court case out of the state of Texas, where the state of Texas exclusively controls license plates. They choose, and they have a policy about how they choose who can have a custom license plate and who cannot. And a pretty well-known hate group asked to create a license plate, and the state of Texas denied their request, and it made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was supported because there was very clear policy that limited the forum for free speech and made it exclusively the government's speech on that particular issue. So that's why the policy is so important.
So do you know what the cost would be if we made a mistake on something like this?
To go to the United States Supreme Court, it's probably 6 years of litigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Seems like litigation's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Thank you, Andrea. Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Brown,
Yes.
Largett,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Alfers.
Yes.
All right, this is unanimous. Okay. Last issue on our resolution number 1685, Ryan House private funding. I call on City Administrator Jason Wilson.
Mayor, can we have a motion?
Councilmember Elfers,
I
would you like to make a motion?
I'll do that. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 1685, Ryan House private funding.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Now we'll call on Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. At the May 6th council study session, the council received a comprehensive review and update regarding the Ryan House renovation. At the conclusion of that presentation, council members Elfers and Bowman discussed a proposed discussed and proposed a resolution that would temporarily toll Resolution 1663 to provide the community with a set timeframe to raise private funds that could be donated to the city to pay for the renovation and preserve the structure. At that discussion, council set forth a framework that needed to be included in that resolution. And that included compliance with the court's order and mandatory tolling on all demolition activities while the comprehensive plan amendment process proceeds to conclusion. 2, a minimum of $2.2 million secured, not pledged by December 1st, 2024. If that amount is received, the city will agree to discuss and possibly reconsider Resolution 1663 and the future of the Ryan House structure and Lucy v. Ryan Park. Number 3, any donation received would be subject to the city's existing donation policy and would only be accepted without restrictions, conditions on the use or the covenants. Number 4, no staff time would be used to assist with fund development or grant applications. And number 5, if the public successfully fundraises the full amount above, the council will consider repurposing the estimated demo costs of $300,000 to help with preservation and or renovation costs. At council's direction, staff prepared the resolution before you tonight. Before I turned over to you for discussion, I did want to point out 2 other things. Number 1, we have received a handful of written comments. They are going to be distributed, if they haven't already, to you, and they'll also be part of the record. Number 2, there's been a lot of discussion over the Heritage Capital Grant of $305,000. That is still in play until June of 25. Now, there is some challenges, as we mentioned on the 6th, that does require a 2-to-1 match in funding, and that funding can only be used for construction. So what that means is even if the city receives the $2.2 million discussed in the resolution, construction would need to commence and $305,000 expended by June 30th. Now, it may be possible to go back to the state and ask for an extension on that grant, but we'd have to show that we were making consistent progress on either construction was imminent or already occurring. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for discussion. Thank you.
Okay. I will take comments from the public first. Oh. Comments from the public on this? Mr. Bierman?
Okay.
All right, so again, Nick Bierman, Department of East, here in Sumner. I do have some comments on the proposed resolution 1685. First of all, we as a group, as the Save the Ryan House group, we are pleased to see an effort to work with us to set a framework for developing a partnership, or at least having the ability for private fundraising to be in place, and that people who do want to donate can see that the city is willing to work and actually accept these donations toward work on the Ryan House. So we are supportive of this resolution, but at the same time, there are many amendments and revisions that we would like to see that would, first of all, we would like to see the resolution set more of a cooperative tone. There are some whereases in this resolution that don't really state the purpose of acting in good faith with members of the community. So we'd like to see some of these unnecessary phrases that set more of an adversarial tone. We'd like to see some of those removed. We'd also like to talk a little bit more about the cost of the project. So specifically, like the Ryan House project, the Ryan House itself consists of 3 components: the old 1-room cabin, the kitchen, and then the farmhouse that everyone sees at the front. So there were at least 2 estimates, and there are other ones that were out there that were given to the city in terms of the amount of money that it would cost for this project to take place. So, I mean, that you all have this information. It's on the city's website. But just to be clear that there is not 100% agreement that $2.2 million is the cost. But if we go with that, we have to remember that 2.2 million includes $350,000 for a kitchen upgrade, where we may not need a full service catering kitchen in the eventual Ryan House, depending on whatever purpose it gets used for. And then on the Heritage Capital Grant that Jason Wilson mentioned, I did talk to the Heritage Capital Grant Program Director, and they told me that the soft costs like engineering and design can be included in the expenditures that $300,000 covers. So I'd like to see some wiggle room, I guess I would say. And I'd also like to see that the $350,000 for the kitchen upgrade, $300,000 from the Heritage Capital Project Grant, and the $300,000 that the city had slated for demolition. We'd like to see that those values would be taken out of the amount that needs to be raised by the public, since the city could commit some small portion already of the total amount that needs to be raised.
All right, anybody else? State your name and where you live.
Melody Adams Forstrom. I live in Federal Way now. I've lived 24 years here. Anyway, so concerning the resolution, and I know the amount is $2.2 million. And just for everybody to know, there's, in 2022, there were 4,414 households. So you're asking people to raise about $498 right before Christmas. And I can tell you, I don't know from people you know, but from people I know, they're living paycheck to paycheck. This town has a lot of working class people. I know there's professionals, but it also stated the average rent people are paying is about $1,700. They're struggling to pay that, to get their food. They're standing in line at food banks or going to other places to get food for free. And now we're asking them to come up with $500 towards this. It's not a nice thing to do. So starting off, just like Nick was saying, Nick Bierman, the amount could be reduced. There's a heritage grant, all the other things that have been presented to you. And Deputy Mayor Cole, who isn't here tonight, congratulate them for utilizing grants. Why aren't we for this? And minus it off the top. The 315 heritage grant, it's good until June 25. And they've stated they'll extend it. Let's use it. The demolition amount. If this is a bona fide offer to save the house and the council and the city means it, take that off the top as well. Let's be fair. $350,000 for a commercial kitchen to include for catering? Really? We can do a replica kitchen of the time, leave $50,000 for a kitchen. The caterers can bring in the food. We don't need that. That'll save us $300,000. It's a lot of money. That still brings it to $1,285. Then we can divide it again into 5. Because we can do it in phases, just like they do the high school. It's on phase 1, right? And so when you divide it in 5, it comes down to $257,000. What are the phases? Phase 1, plan, is essential. You're going to revisit how much does it cost for the renovation. Then you're going to plan the renovation. You're going to prepare the schedule and the budget. Essential to have a budget and a schedule and to follow that. And then phase 2, possibly. These are just.
Ma'am, what time is that?
Sorry. Okay, this was sent to you guys, so you have it.
Anybody else? Okay. State your name, where you live.
Casey Henderson, 5908, 5912, 162nd Ave East. I just want to start by saying I'm in the construction industry. I know how it works. I know how the bidding process works. But I also know that the industry has taken a massive hit over the last 6 months. A year, 2 years ago, when WHJE was working on this, everybody was slammed. We were busier than we wanted to be. And so far this year, it isn't that way. Bids are going out and companies are buying jobs. So in case you don't know what that means, companies aren't making any money off of these jobs. They're paying to be on these jobs so they can keep their best crews working. So when business picks it back up, they don't have to try and call people back. So that's something to consider when going back to WJE and saying, what's it going to cost now? Now that you're not slammed with gills, now that you guys are thirsty for work, where are we at now? And just like the other statements, the 350,000 for a kitchen. I mean, I understand prevailing wage. I understand that we have to follow those laws because it's a municipal project. But I also understand that those municipal projects come with a slight inflation depending on who the company is and who's doing the bids. But they're trying to sell you a $350,000 catering kitchen that you don't need. They know you don't need that. You need to find out what else they're trying to sell you. So you need to ask questions. You can't take your only bid from your only company as gospel, that this is what it's going to be, no matter what, no matter who we use, this is what it's going to cost. You need to ask questions. You need to ask the right questions so they don't think that you're just some dumb homeowner looking to just spend money for fun on whatever they think is best. And then like was just mentioned, I think the resolution needs to reflect cost for phases. And then the Heritage Capital, if that needs to be used for construction, that can easily be gone through with shoring up and making safe the cabin section. That is the red tag issue, if I understand that correctly, to make it safe for future construction to enter in and out safely so that you can do the rest of the construction in phases as we go along. But giving such a short amount of time to raise the full amount when you have all of these chunks that can be taken out from the Heritage Capital, from the demo budget, and then the $350,000 kitchen, and just split it into phases is a lot more feasible for a city this size, because it's a hard field goal to make with a middle school
Your
kicker
time is up.
from the 50.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My analogy, that's so rude.
Like
Long ride home, big
You're
guy.
like, "Fuck."
My gosh.
Hi, I'm Amanda Henderson. I live on 162nd Avenue East. This study session that Carmen did back on May 6th was amazing. The problem is we needed that 9 months ago. That would have answered a lot of questions for the citizens and got the ball rolling. There was no mention of private funding back in August 2023 on anything that I looked over. So in this draft that was drawn up last week, it says that we've repeatedly requested time to engage in private funding efforts. Correct, we have. Why were we not acknowledged earlier? Why were 9 months taken from us? I could grow an entire human being in the time that you guys stole from us to raise this money. And now, and the comment was made last week too as well. Well, I'm thinking as a business person. No offense, we don't need you to think like business people. We need you to think like citizens, because you are also citizens that work for us. We don't want your business person opinion. We want you to care about this the way we care about it as fellow citizens. That's just how we feel with adding more money to this. And oh, now it's not going to cost this. It might cost this for inflation. It's literally, thanks to my husband for stealing my analogy. It's like we're in a football game and we've been in a long football game and we're losing really big now. And you guys are like, whatever, okay, let's put them in and give them a chance. But we're down by 20. You took 2/3 time off the clock and you put the goalpost on moving targets and gave us a middle school kicker and said, here you go. What? That's just, it's insulting. We were told we don't have the money for this. We don't have the money for this. And then last week, no offense, in the next breath, Jason sat here and said, we're doing so good as a city. We don't have a lot of debt. We're actually really good. We got this money. And it's like, for the last 9 months, y'all told us you didn't have it. Which is it? Which is it? Also, I'd like added to this resolution,
that the money that's left over, because I do believe there will be, from his experience, saying that it's not going to cost any more what it is, because these guys are hurting now. They need these jobs. It's not going to cost the 2.2 whatever. If we raise the 2.2 and we have money left over, it needs to stay in here that that money goes to the Ryan House for upkeep or hiring an employee to man it, use it as a welcome. That needs to be stayed. I do not want any of this leftover money, if there is any, to go to anything else. It needs to go to the Ryan Fund. Like I said, this, I don't want to save that for another time, because that's pretty deep. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, you next.
Hi, my name is Melissa Fox. I live on 16913 8th Avenue East in Spanaway. My comments on the resolution 1685 were sent by email, as 3 minutes today would not cover my present input. Although I don't live in Sumner, I have strong ties to Sumner, specifically through the Woolery family, and I've mentioned this in the past, who arrived with the Longmire Party as the pioneers who founded Sumner and Puyallup. The first time I attended a Sumner City Council meeting was to request information on why the memorial water feature honoring founding families had been removed from Heritage Park. My mom, a Woolery, wanted to know what happened and if it had been relocated. The response I received was vague and did not address a plan to replace the memorial. I've stated several times that without the water feature, the name Heritage Park is inaccurate. The removal was just the first I learned of Sumner's moves to erase the history of the pioneers who founded the city. It was that first meeting that I learned the action to demolish the Ryan House. I became involved in challenging the house's removal because it is yet another piece of Sumner's history that will be gone. The suggestion that a plaque or memorial to the house would be sufficient to honor a tangible artifact of history is ridiculous. Across the world, there are numerous examples of building restorations. For example, I was just in Oregon to tour Frank Lloyd Wright home, was dismantled and moved 22 miles to escape demolition by the land's new owners. A grassroots organization assembled, raised money, and fought to save the house. When it was reassembled, updates were made that impacted the original build, but were necessary to meet code requirements. The Ryan House doesn't meet today's building codes, of course not, but that's really not relevant. Architects and engineers manage remodels and restorations. The house is not a total loss. The resolution states a specific timeline for private funding to be raised that makes it virtually impossible to meet. The comprehensive plan should contain open language to allow a reasonable time frame, more than 6 months, to secure funding. As it is proposed, citizens will be pursuing donations. However, it is still possible that grants and funding are available, and to obtain those monies requires city staff's assistance. In the resolution, it states that city staff will not assist. Private citizens cannot apply for funds related to a property the city owns. The city and community members need to partner in researching and requesting these types of funding. I cannot stress enough that this is not just a Sumner matter. It is also the state of Washington history and a pivotal moment. Will the city council be remembered for erasing an artifact tied so closely with the story of Sumner? I would hope not.
Anybody else? Go ahead, state your name and where you live.
Good evening. My name is John Gammon. I live on Cervenka Avenue, just over by Loyalty Park. We've lived here for 30 plus years now. And I want to state up front that I'm not against saving the Ryan House. Let me back up. I did provide written comments via an email. So hopefully you got those and or will be able to read them. And these comments are a little bit of a clarification of what I put in that message. I'm not against saving the Ryan House, but I'm very concerned about the city spending more time, staff time, and precious resources on the Ryan House. I think the staff and the council have done great work in the past. You made well thought out, good decisions. You have to make decisions about priorities, historic preservation, present needs, future needs, and I think the decisions were wise. So I'm concerned about moving forward, and in my reading of the draft resolution, there's a couple of things that I would like to see addressed so that the city doesn't end up being on the hook for more staff time or more funding. And I don't have the construction expertise that others have. But I also am not convinced that $2.2 million is enough. And if there are cost overruns, which I don't know a project when there aren't, who's on the hook for that? Is the city on? If so, as a resident of Sumner, I don't want the city on the hook to spend more staff time or more money out of our general fund budget. So it's that, that's one of the concerns. The other is, it looks like the intent of the resolution is to have the city take possession of the funding if the efforts are successful. And then a decision might be made about whether or not the city will kind of go down the path of renovation. I don't know why in the world the city would take possession of the money before that decision is made. It seems backwards to me. And finally, and maybe it isn't a place for it in the resolution, and there was mentioned by someone about the ongoing maintenance and operation costs that aren't addressed in the resolution, and the city is going to be ultimately on the hook for that as the owner. Where's that going to come from? So thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Gammon. Anybody else?
My name is Amy Rang and I live on Pacific Avenue in Sumner. I want to encourage the city council to make changes that have been suggested tonight by Nick and work with the community to preserve the Ryan House. I appreciate the effort and the idea behind this resolution, but I feel like we need to see the city's actions match more of their words. So looking at $2.2 million, we had more than half of that funding. The city had it and made decisions that cost. So I don't think this should be funded by taxpayers, but I do think the city has an obligation. It's the city's property. And I feel like the city has an obligation to work with the community to help make this happen. And I think washing your hands of it and saying good luck is not really a helpful approach when you purport on your website and in your newsletters how hard everybody's worked to try to preserve it, and it just didn't work out. I mean, the things that I see don't match the actions that I see the city taking. So I would love to see a partnership. I am concerned also about the wording that I heard tonight about like you won't even designate the funds to the Ryan House. So if we raise $2 million, the city takes it, and that there's no guarantee that anything is going to change. You'll consider it. And so I just don't, I feel like that's very disingenuous. I don't understand why there's such a drive to take the Ryan House down, but we live in a democracy where there are checks and balances. And right now the city council is our check and balance on this. So we show up to all these meetings. There is a good group of people with a good variation. We've heard from school children have come and spoke, teachers, PTA board members, retired people. You've had the whole gamut of citizens come to support this. And I just would ask that you, I mean, we have people from inside the city and outside the city. But I think we need really a genuine willingness to work together to make this happen. I don't think it's fair for the city to do it on their own. I don't think the citizens should be responsible entirely for this either. It's city-owned property. And I think we need to be able to work together. So I just had this whole page that I didn't read, but it is,
She can have mine. I'm gonna
No.
pass.
Anybody else? Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Todd Dressel. I'm from Port Orchard. My wife is Nancy Ryan. A couple points that I wanted to make. When the city of Sumner received the title for the valuable property that the house is on in the house, they agreed to maintain it. They agreed to maintain it. I mean, that was a part of the deal. They've had it for 100 years. They're supposed to be maintaining it for 100 years. They didn't maintain it. The city should have maintained it, but they didn't. So part of the reconstruction costs, some of the responsibility for refurbishing a house is the city's responsibility because they agreed to maintain it. Secondly, the responsibility for the letter that they wrote out with the addendum, so that, people volunteer to give money, the $2.2 million. It sounds, when you read it, it sounds like the city doesn't give the money back to the people that gave it to them if they decide not to do it. It would be obvious that if you contribute money for a project and the city decides not to do it, that they get the money back. I don't know what the city is going to do with the money. They're going to say, well, we got $2.2 million. We're going to think about whether or not we're going to do it or not. Oh, well, let's maybe not do it. And then we'll just put the money into the general fund. It's not explained. It's not written well. It should probably be given back to the people that contributed the money. That would be the obvious solution. I think you have a record of it. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tina Burnett, 228 Sumner Avenue. I submitted written comments. And 2 weeks ago, when we had the meeting and the resolution was suggested, I had hesitancy about being hopeful. And when the resolution came out, I was so disappointed that my written comments today were a little harsh. And I apologize, but to all of you, that I was a little bit harsh when I wrote my comments, but I was really disappointed in this resolution. And it says draft, so make it a draft resolution. Incorporate the edits that we suggested. We need more discussion around things like the funding. How much do we need to raise? Can we include the 300,000 or the Heritage Grant in that 2.2 million? What happens if you decide not to? The resolution needs more work. And I know time is running short, but it's not perfect. You guys didn't have a lot of time to create the resolution, and things done in a hurry aren't always done well. Part of my disappointment was the city does things big and small. They do so much right. Loyalty Park, where I live just a few blocks away, the basketball court is great. The new Rainier View Park, that's gonna be great too. It's looking really wonderful. We have weekly street cleaning and the spring and fall waste cleanup. Other cities, other communities envy us for that. I mean, we do a lot of things great. You guys do accomplish a lot of great things, but in a couple areas, you just rushed the gun. You did things in a hurry with demolishing the Ryan house without taking into consideration, and now we're in this place. So just take a little more time, get more input. Maybe you could actually have, instead of just 3 minutes, taking comment, sit down with people around a table and hash this out in person. Take a little time to get it right the first time. And I apologize if my comments sent today were a little too harsh. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr.
I'd like to
Rain.
donate my time to Nick.
Sir, I just want you to be aware that if you donate your time, you will not be a party of record.
I'm cool with that.
Okay, yeah, so Nick Bierman, Parker Road East. Yeah, 3 minutes is hardly enough time to convey a full message of what we want to offer before you today at the city council. We really do seek a partnership. So one thing that we could do toward that would be having some sort of a sit-down session with the Save the Rhine House group, where council members, the city staff, and Save the Rhine House group could talk about the different components of this resolution, talk about the different components of the cost of the project, talk about the different needs for fundraising and where the private fundraising can play a role in that. So I think that would be useful rather than just approving a resolution without having a lot of input from the citizens. So I think it'd be nice to take that step. Also, I'd like to just point out that the Save the Rhine House group that has been appearing before you at city council meetings and been speaking and been active on social media and in the media in general, we would like to be that private fundraising group. So, we don't have it designated in this resolution, and that's okay, but right now I'm trying to put it out there to the public that we are intending to be that group. We already have 501c3 status, and we can work toward developing a foundation to have a fund that holds money that is donated so that we can be in control of that before it gets presented to the city in a check as it's been asked. And then I had one other point that is out of my memory right now. 1 minute ticking down. I can't think of the other thing I was gonna say. It was completely escaped me. But we really do seek a partnership. We really do want to work together. And we really do want to have a spirit of cooperation. We don't want to feel like the public is being presented with an ultimatum that says you come up with the money all by yourself, even though the city has already spent staff time and resources and obtained grants. That we don't want that grant, that the Heritage Capital grant, it is still available till June 30th, 2025. It would be a shame for that money to just go to waste. So it would be nice if we could find a way to contribute that toward this 2.2 million, for example. So we really do seek a partnership. That's the ultimate goal of what I want to say.
All right. That it? Last call, okay.
Mayor, just for the virtual audience, we do have some people attending virtually tonight. If they want to provide comment, you need to use the raise your hand feature. And we'll watch for those in case they come in. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have and turn it over to you for discussion.
Do you have any questions? Andy does.
I had a couple questions. So question number one, I just was curious, what, we had a issue in the past where there was a lawsuit. Has that group responded or made any comments?
I'm thinking about the written comments that we received. Yes, we have received written comments from other groups that aren't represented here today.
They're not, okay. And I was just curious, because I feel like we just talked a little bit about the cost of litigation. I think that is a pretty big obstacle. And I think is that, it sounds like, is there anything, if we passed a resolution like this, would it increase or decrease our litigation risk, or do you know anything about that?
I'm going to turn that over to our city attorney.
I stated during the last study session when we first discussed this resolution that any decision the council makes does open up the city to risk. But if we have any additional discussion about that, we will do it in executive session.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. I just wanted to just really quick comment on is there any reason why the resolution, if the resolution doesn't pass, is there still is there no way for a partnership to happen? Is the resolution required for a partnership? Do we need that in place?
No, it is not.
It isn't, okay.
No,
So
and just to clarify, we've been saying since September that the city is accepting donations and willing to accept donations, and we need about $2.2 million to help this project move forward.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because there's been a lot of talk about partnership, and I think we've been open to that, so thanks.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead, Carla.
I think that there's a lot of great discussion tonight, comments that we received. With that being said, I think there's potentially some misinterpretation of some of the verbiage in this. But we are missing two key members of our council tonight. So I would like to move to postpone this to a date certain and move it out to the June 3rd regular council meeting before we vote, as this resolution stands.
So just procedurally to remind everybody what that means is that this would be moved out to June 3rd. It does require a second. It's debatable and requires a vote, majority vote of council to do that.
Do we have a second for that?
I will second that motion.
Seconded by Councilmember Ranky. And
Discussion and then a vote.
do you want to
Well,
add on to that?
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that. I think that there are a number of different comments, but I think people, whether it was accepted or not, I do have issue with the dollar value. And I don't think that we have a firm plan moving forward. As many people have stated, it's written at 2.2. I would like to have the full council up here to have that vote on if they think that's enough money. That's just my intent. I think the full council should be here. A lot of the consistent comments that we've been hearing the whole time. I too, Andy brought up a good point in regards to litigation. I mean, the city can only afford so much litigation on this manner.
September, I was the only one against the demolition of the riot. Today, the community to secure funds, but see they being very difficult. I'm in favor of giving them a chance, but am disappointed that the city is not willing to provide any staff time or funds to help with the Ryan House rebuild. I will be voting yes tonight, but wish there was more city support.
Anybody else? Were you done, Carla?
I'm done.
You're done. You have more?
In September, I was the only one against the demolition of the Ryan House and remain that way today. I hope the community will be able to secure funds, but see they being very difficult. I'm in favor of giving them the chance, but am disappointed that the city is not willing to provide any staff time or funds to help with the Ryan House rebuild. I will be voting yes tonight, but wish there was more city support.
Thank you, Kurt. Anybody else?
I got
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just start with, I guess, you talk about 9 months ago. Well, 4 of us weren't here 9 months ago. So just so you know, I've been here literally 2 weeks. And probably heard more about the Ryan House in 2 weeks than I have in 42 years that I've lived in Sumner. I will admit, I've been to the Ryan House 100 times probably. All my kids went there and grew up there. I have grandkids that have not been there yet, and I would like them to be there. But, you know, it comes to a point in time where, you know, money and everything, we don't know what transpired 9 months ago or 5 months ago or 3 months ago. I only know I'm going from 2 weeks ago now. And I do have a lot of letters, I got resolutions and everything. But I agree with, Councilman Bowman that if two of the members that aren't on the dais tonight, were on the council then and are not here tonight. And I think it's best for the full council to make a decision. So I'm in favor of tabling this till June 3rd, I think is what we're possibly looking at. So I know it's an emotional issue. It is for me. I do appreciate the Ryan House and all this I had to offer the last 42 years I've been here. And I would like to see some resolution to the problem. I know this is kind of what we came up with to try to compromise and do this, but ultimately, as we all know, as a contractor guy knows too, that everything comes down to dollar and cents, and everything's a lot more costly. Prevailing wages. I know I built a few fire stations in my career, and it's outrageous what things cost. We're doing 4 of them right now in this county in East Pierce, and they are not cheap. So that's just my 2 cents, but I'm in favor of tabling this till the full council can at least all chime in on it and make a decision. Thank you.
Anybody else? You gonna say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, we got a lot of feedback, which I think was the goal, was I think to get people engaged and if there's a way to do it. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed in myself was that there's probably 6 different ideas that are not similar. And the city spent 5 years doing this. So I feel like there's been a lot of time. We had a 1-phase approach, a 3-phase approach, I think a 5-phase approach thrown out there. And I think there's just the time and the money is a real deal. Like the city really, we have to organize our time and our resources are limited and there's just been a significant amount of resources. Nobody, I don't think on the council 9 months ago or today, on June 3rd, if we vote for this, is really excited about the decision. I think it's a big steep hill on the money side for taxpayers. I think somebody mentioned $500 per household if we get the 2.2 million. If it's 3 million and then we got to pay operating costs, that could jump up to 7, so somewhere along the line, somebody's going to pay for it. So I just think the idea of I really appreciate the discussion. I think that's important. I think that maybe that was the mistake in September. And so I think that's what we were trying to correct with this resolution, whether it goes forward or not. I do support postponing it, but I also just want to comment that the time and that we have to make limits on time and where we put our money. And I think that's a big deal. And I think the public discussion is part of it. But I don't know. I think those are really important factors that everyone needs to acknowledge. This is a tough decision for the community, so I appreciate your being here.
Anybody else? Mr. Clerget, are you good? For myself, I don't have a vote, but according to the letters I got, I did not appreciate the letters I got that were rude and criticizing the city for how we operate. We're trying to do our best. If I did have a vote, I don't think it would be a good one. So I just wanted to put that out there that if you want something, sometimes the better way to do it is to be nice. And I'm not accusing any of you. I'm just saying as a whole that the letters that we did receive were not very nice. So with that said, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor, what are we voting on?
Resolution number 1685, Ryan House private.
Actually, no, this is
You
a,
did postponement?
this is a motion to postpone to a date certain, June 3rd, regular council
This is
meeting.
a motion to postpone.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Brown,
Yes.
Elfers,
Yes.
Clarigat,
Yes.
Ranky,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
All right. 5-0. Passes. All right, so we are, do you want to do reports first? Council reports,
Mayor, could you please announce the vote?
5-0. Mr. Clerget, do you have a report tonight?
Not tonight, thanks.
Councilmember Bowman?
None from me. Thank you.
Councilmember Elders.
Just real quick, we did PCRC last Thursday. So the Pierce County Regional Council had a presentation, quite a few presentations, actually. It was, I don't know, it was a lot of information about, one of them is about homelessness. They have a comp plan for ending homelessness in Pierce County, which was interesting. I hope it's effective. A lot of money and a lot of resources being spent trying to solve that problem. And then they had a briefing about opioid issues in the county and the hospital system, which is still really stressed out. So I think it's good to hear that. Not super encouraging, but I definitely feel like those are problems we're all trying to work through. So I think that it's nice that there is a plan in place. I liked some of the parts of the plan. Some of it I wasn't sure would be helpful, but that's the way government is. So I think it's good that we're working through it, and I appreciate everyone's engagement on those issues as well. The bigger issues with the state and the county, as well as locally, they're all connected. So thank you.
Councilmember Rankin.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few words, I guess. Like I said, I've been here 2 weeks doing this, and it is quite an eye-opening experience, I will say. I've been to a lot of meetings, a lot of things, learned a lot about the city. I worked for the city for 22 years, a while back in the fire department. But a lot of people don't realize how much stuff goes on in the city and how much time it takes, effort. And I do appreciate all the city staff, Jason Wilson, attorney, Carmen, Cassandra. I sat in on finance personnel and also public works. Learned a lot of things about traffic impact fees and sewage treatment plants and things like that that I had no idea about. But it's a work in progress. I'm willing to put the time in and energy and effort, and I appreciate all the staff time and everything. Been enjoying it. 2 weeks in, so we'll see how it keeps going. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I appreciate it. And I do appreciate all the citizens coming. That's what democracy's for, to come and state your opinions, even if you disagree with or disagree, but or not. So we all have a say in what goes on in the city. So thank you very much. That's it for
Mr. Brown.
No comment tonight. Thank you.
City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Next week is Memorial Day, so we will not be having a study session. We canceled all meetings for that week. June 3rd is our next regular council meeting, and you'll have East Pierce Fire and Rescue here to give their annual update. You'll consider a resolution accepting a Department of Commerce Climate Change Resiliency Grant, and also a resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Pierce County for opioid settlement fund pooling. Also a contract amendment with Burke Consulting regarding our comprehensive plan. And now we'll also have the resolution that you postponed tonight regarding Ryan House. I also want to invite the community. The Sumner Bonnie Lake VFW will be hosting their annual Memorial Day ceremony at the Sumner Cemetery at 10 a.m. That's 10 a.m. on Memorial Day. If you'd like to help place the flags on veterans' graves, please meet at the cemetery this Thursday, May 23rd at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so you probably heard enough from me tonight, so I'm not going to say anymore. And we will go into executive session for 15 minutes and there will be nothing after, so.
Mayor, I need you to read the RCW into the record.
W 42.30.1101 and II for a period of 15 minutes. There will be no action to follow, and it is 7:52.
Thank you, Mayor.